Hey everyone, welcome to Soul Cafe. We're glad to see you. It's been 1 week, but it seems like longer
It
somehow. Does it
does.
to you?
It totally does. I don't know why actually. Now
I
that you're
don't know, but
suggesting.
longer than it. I mean, for one thing, I was in a different location, so
Yeah.
maybe that was that. But for some reason, it feels like we've been off for a long time, and we
It does to
haven't
me too.
been.
No,
And
we
before
haven't.
that,
And
we
I was
were. So
actually I was telling someone the other day, I was like, oh, and last week we did, and I was like, oh gosh, what did we do last
uh,
week? But then I
that's
remember
that's
exactly.
that's like sermons. I can't remember what I preached.
Yeah.
Half the
But it's
time.
strange that we would both
Remember
admit.
that sermon like 4 weeks ago, and I'll go, So
Mhm.
if I can't remember, what does that mean for you? So
Well, if you're the one doing them, I mean, I think other people might remember what we did last week, but like we're in it, so we're probably because we're constantly then thinking forward, just like you're thinking forward for your next sermon. You're probably like
maybe
really
that's
trying to,
it. You're
yeah.
being generous. That's good. I think you
No,
do
no,
get into what you're doing next, so you start
yeah,
thinking about your
yeah.
thing.
I was
And,
talking to, Tyler Cowan? You know
oh
who he is?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's awesome. He's amazing. And his podcast is amazing. And I just think it's always so interesting how much information he can retain and all his questioning, everything is just like superb. So I met him at an event once and I was like, how do you do it? He goes, oh, I drop everything out of my brain the minute I'm done with the episode. Like I don't even, I learn it, I do it, and then I give room to other stuff. I was like, oh, so, I mean, whether it's learned skill or something you do on purpose, I think there is probably something to the fact that the person doing it is constantly just like going forward to the next thing. So,
Yeah, you're thinking about what you're getting ready to do. So
yeah,
that's how it
it does
is.
feel strange that it does feel like it was a while since
It
we.
does. It seems
It's so strange.
it
Like
seems
the
like a
minute you said it, I was like,
long time. I mean, a lot's happened in my life in this one
yeah,
week, but
I
yeah,
know your daughter
definitely.
got engaged. Big
Daughter got
news.
engaged. Kelly got engaged, and I met with her soon to be fiance, now fiance, and
Mhm.
we drove, and yeah, a lot happens, but still, usually I feel like these come around fast. Like we were
I
like,
know.
weren't we just doing this yesterday?
Yeah.
And this week, I feel like we weren't. I didn't see you since last. Maybe it's because I'm not seeing you between the times we do this. I
Yeah.
don't see
I
you on
mean,
Sunday
well,
anymore.
here
So
on Sundays, yeah, we haven't been able to.
that's odd. How's
Yeah.
Atlanta?
It's good. I think our temperature is probably about what you guys are. Are you guys in the 50s right now?
We're in the 40s. Yep, upper
Oh, okay. We're
40s.
strangely in the upper 50s. We had a very, very windy day today. I don't know if you guys had the same,
We
but
did
it is
too. We did too. Yeah, it's
crazy.
like 48 degrees here right now.
Yeah.
It felt like fall today. Like you had
Yeah.
a
Feels a
kind
little
of
bit.
a summery day that became cold, although my
Yeah.
grass looks like spring, everything looks like spring, but
Right.
and the sun looks like spring, but the
Yeah.
feel is
Yeah.
like fall.
I
Yeah.
actually kind of like that. I'm
You
looking
liked
forward.
it?
Yeah, I mean, I like it when it's like beautiful and sunny and clear, but then it's not so hot. I didn't love the wind. I could do with a little less wind, but I wasn't flying, so I'm fine.
We get what we get. That's how it
We get
is.
what we get.
So
We just
yeah,
move on.
tomorrow's supposed to be pretty cold here, and then
Oh, okay.
I think a warmer but wet weekend. I don't know, whatever.
Same for us. I feel like
Feels
we do
good.
sort of mirror the same weather patterns, except for it just might be about 10 degrees warmer here.
Yeah, 10 degrees warmer, maybe something
Or
like that.
same weather pattern. So yeah, everything's going well here. Jude has his first big church weekend thing this weekend here. First big in-person thing with a big youth group here. So we're excited to see what that looks like. And of course, compare and contrast. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, it's just so weird that he hasn't been able to do that at Columbia for so long. So it's funny that he's out of practice, but we're going to see how that
Yeah,
goes.
we're just getting back too.
Yeah.
Our students are just starting to meet again, and
It's awesome.
people are coming back again, and it's intricate but interesting. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, we keep talking about how we need to talk to people about the getting back to normal. And it was funny that I think you and I were talking about this last week about how everybody's experiencing it slightly different. Even people who've been like anticipating and wanting things to get back to normal, they all of a sudden like have this anxiety about going back out. And they had a whole article about it in the Wall Street Journal this week about just like people trying to now figure out, especially like in business meetings, like, do we shake? Do we, all these awkward moments that are happening because people don't even know how to physically be around each other anymore.
yeah.
Oh, it's really
I think we've lost a step socially,
yeah.
and we'll have to recover that. But yeah, seeing people sort of try to get back into the routine, and like I said, people vaccinated who are still apprehensive. That's interesting
Mhm.
because the vaccines are so effective,
Right.
and then other people who never were quite out, who want to just be all. It's
Yeah.
it's kind of a balance.
So
So,
you got the Pfizer and you got both doses. You're done.
yep, I'm done.
Cyril got his first Pfizer yesterday, and they gave it to him in the most bizarre place. They gave it to him like on the front of his arm. So he got a big knot. Did you get a big knot?
Nope, no, not. So the worst part is to get it in the upper shoulder. I've heard that they can hit,
Oh,
yeah, they can hit the crease right there, and it can be a big
wow.
problem.
Maybe that's why they didn't do it
I
there.
mean, I had nothing the first time. Like I said, Sunday. I think I woke up in the middle of the night. I think and
Right.
thought my arm sore, but the next morning it wasn't. So, and the second one was nothing. Although I was on vacation and I slept 10 hours that night, but to sleep 10 hours on vacation for me, not unusual. I'm
Of course,
tired.
because do you bring your blackout tape and all the curtains?
No, I'm just exhausted when I get away, and the stress is off, and I just kind of sleep.
Yeah.
But so maybe I was tired. I don't know. I don't think so. I think I felt great. And like I told you earlier, my allergies seemed to get better. So I think my immune system attacked that.
Right.
And but maybe it's just the tree pollen was down. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, you're done. That's good. And you
I'm
got to see
done.
family and everything. So that's awesome.
Done is good. Done is good. All right. So we've got two things on the show tonight, right?
Sort of, yeah. I mean, so we're missing Aaron. So we're sad, but we won't have Aaron.
He
We won't
said
have
he said
him
he had
on.
stuff going on, couldn't do
Yeah.
it.
And I feel like that is getting to be this is another consequence of like things coming back online. It's like all of a sudden throwing everyone's schedule off. And I was joking beforehand how I was like running around trying to get ready to get on screen and stuff. So, yes, we do have sort of two things going on tonight. So I think I mentioned to you a couple weeks ago that I did want to talk about the fact that a lot's been reported about how the pandemic has disproportionately hit women. In particular, they've talked about how a lot of women have had to leave the workforce, or just because of a lot of the service jobs, hospitality jobs, things like that were actually done by women. So it could be that job loss, all sorts of different stories and why it's perhaps in numbers wise disproportionately hit women. But then also, I think we've talked about it through this whole year. It's just that experiences have been so different for everybody. And whether you're
And if you had kids at home,
yeah, women
yeah.
who work, traditionally work inside the home or work outside the home, with their kids or not. And it doesn't actually, I think you and I have discussed is like the pandemic and your circumstances doesn't necessarily dictate that you've had the same experience as someone else in like experiences or circumstances. So I'd wanted to have that discussion, but then Samantha had brought a local
Samantha
author.
Wright.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Allison Kelly, and she's written a book called "There's Spaghetti on My Ceiling" and Other Confessions of a
Which I have read the intro to. What because I got it today. So what Amazon would give me, I could read. I think it's hilarious. The whole book. I'm going to get the whole book.
I'm excited for it. So it's essays, and so when I finally read what she had sort of written as the premise of the book, trying to be 100% this, 100% that, 100% that, and I'll call it someone who was a perfectionist maybe before the pandemic, and I'll be interested to hear her perspective on how things have changed or not during the pandemic. Sort of became what a lot of people were thrown into, that situation of trying to be 100% of everything when maybe pre-pandemic they weren't. So anyway, I decided I wanted to mash up the topics. And so we asked two of our favorite Colombians who have slightly different circumstances at home. We have Maria Wojo, who's going to join us, who for most people who know, have 5 wonderful children and has committed to being there to raise them at home. And then there's Natalie Kent, who we all know from the choir and the band, and has been working with the government for a long time and has 2 children in school. And I just felt like they could offer different perspectives of what did they experience during the pandemic. And then, of course, we can bring Allison onto screen as well, because that's sort of like what her whole book is. So the conversation can I'll help us get into the discussion around the book, but I figure we would start with a discussion around what's it been like? What have we thought about? And what do we think about when looking at overall how the pandemic has impacted women in different circumstances, or not, positively or negatively? It doesn't mean that it's all negative. So I guess to kick that off.
So what you were describing earlier, by the way, is what they call superwoman syndrome. Do you guys know what that is? Yeah. So you're supposed to do it all, be able to work and manage the house and manage the kids and do all that at one time, and be like a super community leader all at one time.
Yeah. Yeah, there are some unrealistic expectations, I think, put on women And as at least Maria, Natalie, and yourself know, I don't feel, traditionally, I haven't filled traditional roles in my family, or I haven't lived up to those expectations necessarily. And I've had a wonderful husband who served a lot of those roles instead of me. And so for me, it's always been a really interesting thing to talk to my girlfriends about it, because it's not an experience that I have consistently. I have it in different ways, but not in the traditional way people think around women feeling pressure, to do it all. So this is as enlightening for me to hear as it would be for you, Jim.
Well, it's good you bought some super women on, I think.
I did. They are pretty incredible.
At least a public appearance. We think they are. Don't
Gonna reveal all our secrets.
Natalie and Maria, don't burst my bubble tonight.
Burst.
I'm big fans of both of you, so don't Allison. I'm just getting to know Allison, so she can do whatever she wants. The two of you, don't mess it up.
Oh, goodness gracious. That's a lot.
It's a joke, of course.
I think I'm losing my connection.
So I guess let's start. Natalie, you had, and I actually meant to go look up this stat, and so I don't know if you actually know it, because we were talking about how many women had to leave the workforce, and again, because of my non-traditional family roles, Cyril did end up leaving the workforce officially full time so that he could come home and be with the children. But in a lot of families, that was actually the female's case. Now, it's not what you did, but I'm curious, did you ever see that statistic on how many women ended up pulling themselves out of the workforce to be home during the pandemic?
Yeah, so it's in the millions, some by choice, others not, especially with the hits to the hospitality industry and things like that. The most, I think, startling statistic, I remember hearing it when it came out, was the December jobs report, where there were like 100, and it was all women. It was like 156,000 women lost their job in the month of December. The net loss was 140 because 16,000 men got jobs, but all of the losses were women. So December, I just remember, and I did see that again today when I was looking up in the Forbes article, but it was in the millions.
Yeah.
Kind of fascinating in a way, but because before the pandemic, you remember, the story was men not being able to find jobs, and women were more easily employable. And I will tell you, I deal with a lot of men roughly my age who have a hard time sort of landing. So that was sort of the story. And then the pandemic hit, and it seemed like the old mores were more, in play, and women were having a harder time finding employment. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it just shows you how quickly progress can happen, and then how quickly we can lose it if things come into crisis. And
Right.
we've seen that, I think, with the civil rights movement and everything else, is we can make a ton of progress, and then one thing can set us back in some of it. And everyone knows that I don't necessarily always argue that it's total progress to say that women should be now out working, and that's an automatic that now should be the expectation, because I think any individual, if
It's
they
progress, they should have the opportunity.
they should have the opportunity, exactly. So I'm just curious, Natalie, you do work full time. Brian works full time, and the interesting thing about his position is he's a teacher. So as Allison can relate, when you're a teacher, during the day, one of the things I've learned, and I'm sure, Jim, you hear from Kelly a lot, is like they don't have a lot of ownership over their schedule. So once something starts, they're very, very much tied up. So it's essentially like you having been home working full time. And even though Brian was there, not really having someone else that you could rely on to kind of jump in based on what time it was. I'm just curious what your experience was with that.
So Brian he's a math resource teacher in Fairfax County for an elementary school. And I work for DARPA, which is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. So it's the R&D arm of the DoD. And I do a lot of their contracting and contract negotiations. So my job was very much, it was very easy to transition that to home as far as work that I do. The agency was great about technology and equipment. So that part of it was fine. There were several false starts for Brian, but he was called in to work virtually for a while, and it was a very difficult it's been a very difficult time to be a teacher, teaching virtually and doing all the things that he was trying to do virtually. And you're right, during the day, he does not have a lot of flexibility. During the school year, he doesn't have a lot of flexibility. The summer he does, and you better believe I take advantage of that. But especially, and even this year, I even felt, I don't want to bother him because what he's trying to do is really hard and really important right now. So I'll just figure out I have flexibility, and I'll figure that out without trying to pull him away from his teachers and his students. So, some days we did better than others, but we tried.
You were very good at having a lot of grace. And of course, Lily, was she able to be in the CDC for most of the time? I forget when they went back.
Yes. So our situation was such that we were able to send her back to preschool in June to Columbia CDC. We felt comfortable with the mitigation. We felt that it was just better for her to be there with her peers and with preschool teachers that know what they're doing and love them and can devote time to them. I mean, you start to feel really bad. They come to you, want to tell you something, or they want you to go do something, and it's like, I'm on this call, I'll get to you in 5 minutes. So you want them to have to have that kind of interaction. So we were back to June, and that definitely changed the dynamic of sending a 4-year-old to preschool.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, Maria, just to pivot to you. Now, I have the benefit of having both of these women as very good friends of mine, so I know all their stories, and so they'll have to just put up a big T if they don't want me to say something, because otherwise
No, you can't start like that.
No, but I'm going to pay you a compliment. But one of the things that helped, then proceed. That helped me a lot during the pandemic, because as you know, I did not come into it naturally nor handle it all that well, and was very frustrated at being home and with the school system and everything else. And you sort of surprised me, but also buoyed me throughout it by being so very positive about the experience of you have kids ranging from, gosh, how old is Preston now? 7 to 22.
3.
So 23. Oh my gosh, man, that's crazy. 23. So
5 kids.
5 kids.
Count them. 5.
One's already gone, but got to come back. One's about to leave again, and so I welcomed your perspective where you saw it as an opportunity to bring the family home to roost, so to speak, and for you to be able to build that type of familial structure back in when your kids were actually going all over the place. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about, or if you'd be willing to talk a little bit about how you guys were fairly active in so many places, let alone Columbia Baptist, but sports, everything. And actually the pandemic gave you somewhat of a pause in a positive direction. Yes, you could say that. It gave us a great deal of pause, to the point now we've been back into our activities for 2 weeks, and I feel bad wishing for quarantine. So that's how much we welcomed the pause. And quite frankly, we didn't realize we needed the pause as much as we did until we were gifted with it. And my kids, especially the 23-year-old and the now 18-year-old, would not call it a gift. Obviously, this interrupted, what they had going on. The 23-year-old was in his senior year in college. His senior collegiate baseball season got cut short. So there was a lot of loss, that everybody experienced, just like everybody everywhere experienced loss. But we did see it as an opportunity to kind of reset. And really what it ended up being for us was a chance to do what we said we wanted to do all along. So for years and years and years, for example, we'd talk about, we are going to put on the calendar one Saturday a month that it doesn't matter what is going on, we are not participating. We are going to take our family out to Shenandoah. We haven't been out to Shenandoah since the first year we moved here in 2004. And it's like activities started getting in the way, and the things that we wanted to enjoy about where we live geographically, or experiences that we wanted to have as a family, that wasn't
on the sidelines of a little league field. We had just not made time for it. So for years we said we're going to do this, and we just didn't. We just didn't make it happen. So in a way, this was, the pause that we needed to kind of refocus and to do the things that we want to do. And we have gone to Sonic in Winchester 1,000 times, which may not be a big deal to anybody that's not from Texas, but
Sonic's pretty good.
Yeah. And it was all of a sudden we were finding new ways to connect as a family, to have experiences. And really for us early on, especially with the kids and the older ones, is, okay, what is the opportunity in this? Like, yeah, this stinks in a whole lot of ways. And again, if you talk to them, it probably wasn't as fantastic of an experience for them as it's been for me. But really, just opportunities. And one thing we've been saying lately is, if we come out of this the exact same way we went into it, then we missed the opportunity altogether. So what are the lessons that we can take away from this, that we can do things differently that we always wanted to do, but just never made the space to kind of think through it, to just implement it. And so that was kind of, when you talk about opportunity, that's kind of where our headspace was like, okay, we've got all this time, and of course we all went into it hoping we'd get 2 weeks off from school. We laugh now because our now 15-year-old, at the time, he said, let's watch all the Marvel movies from beginning to end in order. And I remember we were like, oh my gosh, I hope we have enough time to watch all of them. We have to go back. And now it's funny because we could have watched them, 10 times.
They're all over. You got no more. They need to make more.
I know. So we just kind of entered it with the different headspace, in part because we were just so everywhere, and we had been longing for the pause. And so it was a gift. It was a gift.
Yeah.
So I remember calling you guys to talk to you. You probably remember this conversation, but I just called you just to see how you guys were doing because I missed you, and having this conversation exactly. And I think you just have to make the best of whatever comes anyway. I mean, what choice do we have about some things in life? So we're going to talk about perfectionism in a moment, which is sort of rooted in control and this idea that we can somehow make life what we want it to be. And I think you received it as a gift. And I remember having that conversation with you and saying to you, Maria and Mark, I think that's great. It was different for us because we had no kids at home. So it was really different. But I found some of the same kind of reset in my life, just constantly going, being at something every minute, sort of saying, I'm going to sort of scale things a bit.
Yeah, I think that was the, and Maria, you and I talked about it a lot because, as you know, I'm a very unplanned person. My kids aren't in any activities. So like the world stopping did not necessarily provide us new opportunities to not have anything to do. It was just like, oh my gosh, we literally now really have nothing to do. Whereas before we'd always be the last minute. Nancy's going, you want to go out? You want to come over? Want to do this? And we never had plans. So we were always flexible. Whereas you were so booked and had so many things. You would just naturally, with 5 children, I still,
my wife could never live that life, so that wouldn't happen here. She's very, very. Well, we should pull Allison in on this one too. I mean, we're waiting for her book, but she's a mom too, so she can tell us about her pandemic experience.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I read that you raised 2 teenagers, but I wasn't sure if they were still in the house. So tell us more about what you went through and what you experienced.
Yeah, well, I can really relate to some things that both Natalie and Maria said. At the time that the pandemic started, my daughter had just come home for college spring break and so sort of like what Maria was saying, we were like, oh, well, I guess we're just going to have a 2-week spring break. And then it got extended. And so like Natalie, I'm a teacher and I'm trying to figure out online learning. And even though she's 19 years old, it's like, I can't talk to you right now. I'm on a call. But I think that I really also tried to accept it as a gift to reset. And actually, I was talking to my class this week, and the question I posed to them was, what about this pandemic would you like to keep? And their answers were just amazing. Everything from my pandemic puppy, which so many kids got puppies and cats and pets, and to the fact that now we can eat lunch outside because we're trying to socially distance, and they think it's cool to have picnics outside. So really trying to think about these things that we were so innovative and creative in solving these problems. Last year, I had the opportunity to go to a high school graduation. My first class teaching kindergarten was graduating from high school, and they had a big car parade through the neighborhood, and kids had signs, and grandparents were out in the lawn chairs, and kids who were playing musical instruments out their car roofs. And it was just such an amazing, inclusive experience. So unlike, the DAR Constitution Hall, you can only have 2 tickets. You have to get there an hour ahead of time. And I thought, this is better. I love this. And so thinking about what from this pandemic can we keep moving forward? I don't want to go back to the old way. I want a new normal. And as a teacher, I really appreciated we have so much more of an emphasis on social emotional learning now. That idea of let's get these building blocks in place and make sure these kids feel safe, they feel included, they belong. And then we can teach them how to multiply and divide.
Yeah, my contention has been that people are more resilient than we give them credit for, and especially children. I got to tell you, whenever I preach that, I got kicked, just to tell you. So, but I really think if you look back at generations that became great, they almost always went through some sort of an enormous challenge, and would have been considered something that couldn't be overcome. And to overcome something like that, I think builds something into human beings. And sometimes I think modern civilization doesn't give us that, the opportunity to sort of adjust, adapt, and to figure out how to make things work.
I'm curious because, the subtitle of your book is a reformed perfectionist. Now, Natalie, I wouldn't say you were a perfectionist, but I know your Enneagram, and I know you're comfortable talking about it. You're a 2, so you're a caregiver. So I do see you as someone that has always been going, okay, how do I do this? How do I do that? And so when reading the prologue for the book, the trying to be 100% mom, 100% teacher, 100% wife, 100% everything, 400% doesn't add up to a human being. So how do we do that? And I'm wondering actually if you, Maria, and Allison were just way more better prepared for the chaos of the pandemic because you're used to being in a place where you want to be 100% of everything. Whereas I'm happy to admit I'm happy to be 50% of something sometimes. I'm okay with it. So for me, I was like, no, you may not force me into being 100% of everything right now. And I actually really rejected the whole pandemic, mostly because I felt like it was asking me to be everything. And I had rejected that theory for so long. So I'm curious, Natalie, did you feel somewhat more prepared for dealing with the way the world was because you were just, and Maria, you too, I mean, and Allison, I guess questions for all 3 of you, but because you're in your mind, you were already sort of holding all of those things in tension and working through them.
I think maybe I thought that was going to be the case. Maybe the first 4 days, I was like, I've got this. I've ordered as many art supplies as I can that are available from Amazon. I'm just going to set all this up. It's going to be fine. And then, the 4th day, all chaos breaks loose. The kids have eaten only fruit snacks for the day, things like that. So I think the hardest part for me personally was eating in the boundary between work and home was gone, right? So, when you have an office set up in the corner of your bedroom, when you have an office set up in the kitchen, that boundary is just gone. It's, I'm instead of signing off and walking away, it's like, oh, I was waiting on that thing and I just heard a ping. Let me go see if that's what it is. And so, I would work, I would essentially work for 12 hours a day with constant interruptions to get in, 8 hours of like billable work. And so just the bleeding of those two things together. And then obviously you're feeling like you cannot give anyone your best. No one is getting your best. Sorry, I can't take that meeting. I've got to go make lunch for my kids. I can't talk to you right now. I'm on this phone call. Like, I can't get my blurry Zoom background up quick enough so they don't see the like 10 piles of clean but unfolded laundry behind me. Like, you're just not giving anybody your best. And for someone who's a very strong Enneagram 2, that's really like, if I can't take care of you because I can't take care of myself, like, it's not good. It's not good.
So that blurring of the lines, you just described the whole existence of a pastor. But I will tell you, when I remember, Natalie, I think it was about week 4, and you were up on the stage and I was down on the floor, and I came and asked you how you were doing. And you said, "This needs to be over now." Do you remember that? I had any control over it.
Well, I feel like, okay, we'd have, and even some of the other, especially like moms in our small group and things like that, we'd feel like, okay, we had 3 good days. We're going to be okay. We're being creative. We're trying to find the meaning in this. Maybe I found some meaning today. And then like, boom, something happens. Somebody makes a decision that you can't do anything about, and it just all comes crumbling down. So
I think if you had kids at home during this and you survived it, much less thrived, I think you did well. I think this is especially hard for people who have small children at home. And nobody in our church who has small children has not struggled in the midst of this. It's just it's so much. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
I mean, so Maria, you were able to take a lot of really good messages from that, but I'm sure, you're not sitting here going, oh, well, it was all easy. So, I mean, what were some of the challenges that you found that you didn't necessarily think you'd find because you felt like you were getting a lot of time opened up and, the ability to be with your kids full time?
Some of the challenges, well, how much time do we have? It's funny that you say that, because even today, I told the kids, I said, for Mother's Day, I want one of those machines where you come and you pull a ticket and then a thing that says now serving number whatever, because that has been probably the biggest thing in this whole thing, of just constant coming at me 24/7. And I've had to really remind myself, like, okay, we're all kind of in this space where none of us knows what we're doing. I mean, all of a sudden we're thrust into these roles, like Natalie was saying. Okay, I have to teach. It was funny today. Owen was joking with Preston because I stay with, him and try to help him with school. And he was like, "Mommy's the nicest principal ever," which he doesn't think so, because I'm on. And he was like, and Owen goes, "And the lunch lady, and it's like all of a sudden we were thrust into all these roles. And, today, like I said, I was cutting Nate's hair, in the kitchen next to the pork that was, it's just like all these things that we've just kind of fallen into. Someone used the word adapting. So we've adapted, but they've not been without the challenges. And I think the biggest difference with young kids, I agree. I don't know how people with young kids have managed, because one of the blessings out of this is our kids were older. So where some parents of younger kids feel so socially hungry, Mark and I feel a little different, because we've had older kids to hang out with, and we've been able to do older people activity, and not just, even though we've played our 1,000 games of Uno or whatever. But I think, there have been there've been a lot of emotional challenges dealing with what the older kids are going through, not just the physical challenge of, really young kids that a lot of people have had to endure. So, for us, most of our challenge have circled around like, okay, what are the protocols for our family? Like, how are we going to handle it? Because we're thinking of, especially at the beginning, it was like, well, if you go with your friends and you go with your friends and you go and we've multiplied, all this stuff, and then trying to keep each other encouraged that we're doing this because we want to protect each other, because we want to protect other people, and being encouraging to persevere through the things that, for our family that we've decided will work for us or whatever. So, even when we got to places where we're like, okay, we agreed upon this, we're all on the same page. somebody would feel, really emotionally anxious or stressed or just mad, because they can't just go do what they want to do, that it was just a constant circling back to revisiting a lot of the emotional stress that came with this. So those were probably our biggest challenges was related to that.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about perfectionism. I want to get to spaghetti on ceilings because I found the introduction to your book, Allison, really funny and enjoyable. And I think I am a recovering I don't even know if I'm recovering. I identify with perfectionism. So let's talk about your book a little. What got you into this topic?
Well, I think the act of raising children got me into this topic because, as we've just been discussing, there's never really a day that everything goes according to plan. And I think that when you're in your maybe 20s, 30s before you have kids, you have this idea that somehow you can direct the way your life is going to go. And even when my kids were little, I had control over what we were going to eat, where I was going to take them, what I was going to sign up for, what kind of clothes I was going to buy them. And I started this essays written in this book when I turned 40. My kids were 10 and 12. So they were at that maniacal age bracket where they signed up for everything but couldn't drive themselves anywhere. And so I became sort of like, I was having a hard time relinquishing control. And so the stories in the book are about teaching, parenting, different essays about raising a family, being married. Paul and I have been married. We'll be celebrating 25 years this November.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And, we're still learning about each other. So like this last year during the pandemic, we really started to realize, wow, Allison's an introvert at heart. And she really likes at the end of the day to have her alone time. And Paul is an extrovert who comes out of his office like, oh, I haven't seen a human being all day. And so kind of navigating that. But yeah, I started writing these because I thought it was a way to reflect and kind of bring a sense of humor to some things that, didn't go according to plan.
So, perfectionism is actually, it's one of the Enneagrams. I think it's Enneagram 1, right? Natalie, you're like my resident expert, or Maria. And so, some people do claim to be perfectionists, which could be different than managing chaos and other types of things. So when you call yourself a recovering perfectionist outside of having kids, like, had you always been someone that sort of needed order and wanted things a specific way? Kids then threw in this great big lesson to you that, you really don't actually get to do this. God's way of showing everybody that they're not a perfectionist, right? Or was this more about like the balance that sort of pushed you into feeling like you had pressures to do everything the right way?
Yeah, Erin, I think the latter. If you talk to my college friends, they think my personality right now is hilarious because the fact that I'm organized, on top of things, rule follower, they're like, where's Allie from college? Because your room was a complete disaster. And you were always saying like, can I borrow your computer? I have a paper due in an hour. So I don't know how... Somehow along the line, I grew up and got married and had kids. And then all of a sudden I had all this responsibility, right? To my job and my kids and my family and my, and so I was trying to rein it in, trying to get some control over it. And sometimes
I have a little different view of perfectionism. I'm intrigued by the Enneagram thing. I think the one sort of needing to have things in order is one form of it. So I'm an Enneagram 3, just for what it's worth. But I'm a perfectionist. When I do what I do, I want it to be exactly right. In fact, frankly, I'm looking at this screen, and there are pretty much 5 perfectionists on this screen, in their own way. So, Natalie, when you perform, you want it to be perfect. You want it to be exactly right. I think we all have our own way of sort of, it has to do with our fear of presenting something that won't be fully received or accepted. And then it's what we value that defines what we're perfectionistic about. That's what I think. That's just my take.
I think it's interesting that you think I'm a perfectionist. I'm just controlling, which I know you said is the root of perfectionism, but it's not that it has to be perfect. It just has to be my way. Is that the same thing? Because if it is, then I'm a
I
perfectionist.
think it can be. It depends on it depends on what is important for you to put forward, in my view. Like, we all have something we want people to see and we want people to appreciate, and we all have something that we want to be good at. And I just think, of course, DC is just loaded with perfectionists. You're not going to find too many people who are just going, I don't really care, including you, Aaron, with all of your, I'm not a perfect, you do care. What you care about, you care deeply. And I just think, it's a lot of type A's with different personalities who sort of put forward what they put forward.
Well, I think that I don't want to miss the point that the way in which, and I'm curious actually, Allison or Natalie or Maria, if Allison, like the transition of becoming a parent though, and I don't want to miss the point that women do, I think there is a societal pressure that women would be able to hold all of these positions within the family, these responsibilities. And, again, for me, lucky or not, like I just wasn't raised with a woman who did everything. And so I wasn't raised with a model of that being the requirement. My mother worked full time, but then we also had a live-in nanny and we had people who helped around, like my dad helped, my stepdad, I just wasn't raised with a model where that pressure was put on me. And I didn't.
Before we came on, I was saying the superwoman syndrome, that
you're
supposed to do everything exactly right in about 10 compartments.
Right. And Natalie, you and I were talking about this yesterday a little bit, even like about how what perceptions you even brought into your marriage, and like societally you thought you needed to do certain things. But then Brian was kind of like, I don't really care. I was raised on chicken nuggets. It's fine.
So I grew up, my mom, she was a nurse and she worked part-time when we were born. And, and she did a lot for our house, a lot for our home. And when Brian and I got married, and especially after we had Julia, I remember, just being so overwhelmed and upset that I could not do all of these things that my mom did. And, at some point I said something to Brian, just about like, I'm sorry. And he's like, why are you apologizing to me? I don't have those expectations for you. You have those expectations for you. Brian grew up, and his lovely mother, she worked downtown. She was a GS-15. Like he said, we were the first kids dropped off at daycare. My mom and dad went to work. We were the last kids picked up. We came home. We had dinner. It was life. I have none of these expectations for you. You are putting them all on yourself. And that was kind of an eye-opening moment for me of the pressure I was putting on myself to have something that, looked good from the outside, right? You want everybody to think you have it together. Surprise, Columbia, I don't have it all together. That's why
nobody does. Nobody has it all together.
Facing a corner and not like, the room right now.
Your corner looks awesome though, Natalie. Nobody has it all together. And that's what that from what I can read in the introduction, and I want to read the whole book, that's what this book is about, is how you come to accept that you don't have to have it all together for it to be good.
Yeah.
Allison, I'm just curious if
I've had people that have said to me before this book came out, like, you just have it all together. And I'm thinking, oh, wait till you read this. There's actually a chapter in the book called Superheroes Do Cry. So
for you to put this book out, was it sometimes I think if it's comforting to lay it out there and to say, I don't have to, this is who I am, and I can just put it forward. Was that freeing for you? To of course, you wrote the blog for years, so therefore you were doing this along the way. But was it freeing for you just to lay it out there and say, in the title of the book, "There's spaghetti on my ceiling"?
Yes, and a little vulnerable too, because when you write personal essays, you're putting so much of yourselves into this. So when you read this, Jim, you're going to know me a lot better than I know you. And so there's a little bit of vulnerability there. Like, what if he reads this and thinks, oh, actually, I don't agree with this at all, or I don't like her. Why did she react that way? And so there is a little bit of vulnerability in that. But I think that moreover, I think that it's more about connections, that people read it and they say, this happened to me, or I connect with this, or this reminds me of something I went through. And that's been the rewarding part.
So I know you're reflecting on it now, but when you were in the minute and writing some of these stories, and maybe you can share one that was particularly funny or interesting that everyone would go, yep, been there. Were you able to have, whether it was a sense of humor or a sense of relief in the time of writing it, or is it merely in reflection, realizing that this was the story?
I think that the writing helped me process. I've always been a big believer in keeping a journal. And I've done a lot of work with spiritual journaling. And I think that the act of writing it helped me to process it and kind of bring things in perspective. So one chapter I can remember off the top of my head is called Dry Socks. And it's about when my son missed the bus. And I had told him, look, if you don't get up and get out on time, that's your problem. You need to walk to school. Well, it turned out that the day he missed the bus was this torrential downpour. And so I made him walk to school, and I walked with him. And by the time we got there, like, he was just furious with me. We were both soaking wet. And I ended up driving home and bringing him a clean change of clothes. So, if I had just driven him from the get-go, it would have been a 5-minute thing. But I was so like, this was the plan. I have to be accountable. And looking back on it and laughing about, this is silly. Why am I so mad about this? He's a good kid, and he missed the bus, and we were both able to laugh about it. He's very proud. He's almost 22 now. He's about to graduate from college, but he's very proud of the chapters where he's in the book. And my daughter says, Jackson, they're a lot more than me. And I said, well, because I had to do a lot more processing with Jack.
That's pretty funny. I remember one of the best pieces of advice I was ever given was by my boss at the Washingtonian, and my kids were maybe only 3 and a couple months at the time. And she said, always hold the punishment to be something you weren't planning on anyway. Like, say, well, I was going to take you to go get ice cream, but I guess we're not doing that. Because too many of us make the fault of going, well, you can't have TV after that, and go, oh wait, I want him to be watching TV right now. I need a couple of minutes of alone time. It's one of the best pieces of advice.
But then again, that wet walk to school may have shaped your son's character in a pretty vital way. So it's kind of an interesting. It's kind of, when you're a parent. So my kids are older now, and whatever I did, right or wrong. You get to a point there's nothing I can do now, but you're weighing constantly what is the character development piece versus the easy piece, and sometimes they fall in conflict. I think so. When I hear you talk about making your kid walk to school, I'm not sure that's all bad, but it was harder for you, so you got wet too. But I think we're not going to be perfect parents, and if you think you're going to be, I can tell you for sure, and Maria, you have one old enough now to know this too. You're going to have a 23, 24, 25, 26. I guess at some point I'll have a 40-year-old, and you're going to look back and see plenty of things that weren't perfect. And you sort of do the best you can with what you have in the moment. And I think recovering from perfectionism means accepting less in yourself than perfectionism. You're not going to be the perfect parent. You're not going to be the perfect husband. You're not going to be the perfect wife. You're not going to be the perfect pastor or the perfect government employee or the manager or media consultant or whatever you are. You're not going to be perfect at it. So I think the person, at least for me, that is hardest to forgive is me. I can forgive other people way more easily than I forgive me.
Mhm.
So is that part of your book's realization that you just have to accept yourself for what you are?
Well, I don't want to give away the ending, but I think you're on the right track.
All right, wanted to make sure. I'm
And,
big into spiritual journaling, by the way, too. Writing to process is a big deal for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Maria,
think-
you're a big journaler too. You've thought about, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have journal after journal after journal, but that is how I process too, how I pray, how I'm able to see, really what's inside of my heart and my mind. But your comment, Jim, about having older kids and then realizing like, okay, I did what I did. And sure, there's plenty of opportunities to realize that I did some things poorly. And quite frankly, I think that's why God gave me 5 kids, because I've had lots of, I mean, Preston's only 7. Like I can do it totally different.
Are you saying you get it right with the 5th one? Really?
Maybe even
I can tell you 2 weren't enough for me to get it right.
So I've got, I see like, okay, Owen's got, 3.5 years. So maybe by Preston, maybe not, who knows? I might even have, laundry that doesn't stink horribly by the time Preston gets out of the house. But the expectation's low for everyone on that at this point.
I think the biggest thing you kind of figure out, Maria, is they're probably going to turn out okay. I mean, there's no guarantees.
Yeah.
But they're probably going to be all right in the long run, despite our foibles.
Yes. I see that with Matthew already, which is really exciting to see that, your faults, they kind of fall somewhere out there, your fault in parenting, but, to see him become the young man that he's becoming, it's definitely encouraging and gives you hope that, there is no such thing as perfectionist in anything, but especially when it comes to parenting. So
I think that was like the biggest equalizer also of the pandemic, in my view. It was really requiring everyone to take a hot second to look around themselves and realize there was no comparable situation, because regardless of what anyone was doing, there were so many variables in everyone's situation that would have made it different for them, a different experience for them. I mean, you're looking at this screen right now, 1 male and then 4 females, all in different, there's different expectations for a woman who everyone perceives works inside the home. Oh, she's got to have this covered because she's already at home, right? And then teachers have abbreviated schedules. They can handle this sort of, and they already do this for a living. And then, a working mom who has a job who can be flexible. I mean, there's expectations, and every little variable would have been something you could have compared yourself to and tried to hold yourself to 100% of, and yet they all came with their different complications or different challenges. And to your point, each of you and Jim, that you come out and you on the other side, you realize everyone will be fine. Everyone's probably going to be okay.
Yep, they are. And there are no expectations for pastors. So that's good.
Yeah.
So Allison, what does it mean to be recovering? I think this is actually, when I read Erin's questions that she emailed out, this was in there. Yeah. So, when you say I'm a recovering perfectionist, what do you mean by that?
I think, I still want to get things right. I still want to be the best teacher I can be and the best mom I can be and, the best everything I can be. But I think that I really learned to be more self-reflective about when those tendencies serve me and when they don't. And being able to kind of stop and think like, okay, I can't do everything here. So what's going to matter in the long run? What really is going to matter? And it's not whether or not I get the lights straight on the Christmas tree. It's the people who are gathered around it. But I'm always going to start out wanting to get the lights straight on the Christmas tree. I don't think that's ever going to go away, but I'm a little bit better at being able to tell the difference between when it's going to serve me and when it's not.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah. Good perspective.
Yeah. As Jim mentioned, and Cliff can attest to this, on Sunday mornings, we want what we're putting forward to be I'll use the word perfect. I mean, we want it to be meaningful and worshipful. We want it to be good. And there are some times where, situations where, I found myself like in my head thinking, that wasn't quite right. We flubbed it a little. But then those are the times where we get feedback from people about like, oh, that song was so meaningful and we really love this. And it is like that check on, what we have in our minds, that, what it needs to be meaningful, and what we think it needs to be meaningful. Right. So those are always really good. It's funny how that works out.
Well, it's possible there's such a thing as too perfect, that then it's overproduced and it doesn't seem genuine, right? So if we get so good at something that we're no longer human,
Right.
I think that's hard for us, those of us who try to master something and do it really well. So I think, Natalie, your point's well taken. So Allison, we want people to find your book and to read it. So where could they find your book?
Well, if you are local, it is at Stylish Patina, which is a lovely local gift shop in Falls Church. And so you can buy it there. If you're not local, there's Amazon as an option, or bookshop.org, which is a way to support indie and smaller bookstores. So really, if you're local, shop at Stylish Patina. And if you're not, you can Google it and find a store that best fits your needs.
And I think, Aaron, did you say that there's a period of time? Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, proceeds, I think, right? Between Mother's Day?
Yes. So any of my book sales between now and Mother's Day, I'm going to donate half of the proceeds to the Spend the Hunger Ministry.
Spend Yourself. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
We love Spend Yourself, so thank you for doing that.
And that's specifically through the Stylish Patina, right?
And I'll honor any of the purchases anywhere. So absolutely.
So to close, tell us where the title comes from. We haven't heard that story yet. Spaghetti on the Ceiling. I actually, it's in the intro, but tell me about that.
Well, my husband was cooking with my son, and so he was trying to show Jack that if you want to know if spaghetti is done, you can throw it to the wall, and if it sticks, it's done. So rather than throw it to the wall, Jack threw it up, and it splat, landed on the ceiling, and then it didn't come down, and I can't reach the ceiling.
It was done.
And it was done. And so it just stayed up there for the longest time. And every time I looked at it, I would think, I need to get the step stool out and get that thing down. And then there was just something that, I decided, no, I'm not going to do it. And eventually it did fall down on its own, but it became kind of a funny reminder to us that, in everybody's life, we all have some spaghetti on our ceiling, and it might not show up in your Instagram feed, but we've all got it.
That's great. That's great. All right. I want to encourage everybody to go out and buy the book, to support Allison as a local author, and also to learn something about your perfectionism, because we have a lot of them around our place. And then to support Spend Yourself. That's a bonus. So thanks to all of you for being here tonight. Of course, Maria and Natalie, you know how much we love you. And Aaron, thank you always, and for getting this together. And Allison, it's great to meet you. I think hope to meet you in person.
Absolutely.
And to everyone out there, have a great week. We're glad you were at Soul Cafe. Bye-bye, everybody.